Everybody, welcome back to Readers That Write, your go-to destination for all things book-related. So today we're going to talk about one of the big influences on me that I haven't had a chance to talk about yet, and that's Isaac Asimov, one of the founding fathers of modern science fiction and robotics and artificial intelligence. He is a massive person in a lot of different fields, including a few of the ones I'm in. And I'm super, super excited to talk about him and give a brief overview so that anyone who's curious who he is and what he does will have at least some information to get started with. A lot of you might know Isaac Asimov for his work in robotics and a lot of the harder science fiction he wrote. Those were some of his most popular works. Including creating the 3 laws of robotics that are driving principles even today in robotics, even though a lot of them aren't fully followed anymore because they have become very impractical and end up canceling each other out. But that's a whole different video for a whole different channel, and you can look those up as well. But he was a lot more than just that. He was a prolific science fiction writer, as well as a mystery novelist. He wrote heavily in biochemistry. He wrote heavily in physics. He wrote even some religious books as well that are very, very fascinating and tell a lot about who he was and what he was like as a person. But today we're going to focus on his literary legacy and why he's such a big influence to science fiction readers and writers like me, and maybe do a little bit deeper dive into that as well. So the first thing we have to talk about is his literary legacy. The man was a legend. Despite working in robotics and astrophysics and biochemistry and being a professor and doing all of the things he had to do that would be way more than most people can handle, even by themselves, he was also a prolific writer. He wrote dozens of books that won dozens of awards. He was one of the top-ranking people on multiple bestseller lists throughout his life and afterwards. He's even been given the bestseller of all time award by the Hugos several years ago. And I'm aware the Hugos have a lot of controversy. This was before that. But a lot of his works are so fantastic that a lot of people don't know where to start with it, don't know even how to grasp it because it is harder sci-fi most of the time. He does have some softer stuff as well, but there's a lot to go on. You've probably seen some of his stuff creeping into more modern pop culture, including iRobot, and more recently on Apple TV is The Foundation, which is personally my favorite series he's ever written. And the show actually does it pretty good justice. I was surprised. I did not think that would adapt well, and it has adapted far better than I expected. So if you have free time, go watch it. It's good. Or even better, go read it. It's even better. There's a lot of stuff that does get dropped because adaptations have to. That's just how adaptations work. But it did a very, very good job of telling Asimov's story. One of the reasons Asimov was as popular as he was throughout his life, and his books are still as popular as they are, and are referenced almost religiously by science fiction writers, is a lot of his character development. Prior to his involvement in science fiction, character development wasn't big. A lot of the stories were far more based on the science than they were on the character and the character arc. But he came through and changed all of that, setting up the golden age of science fiction and leading the way for a lot of other writers like L. Ron Hubbard, Frank Herbert, and many, 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 many more to create these character-driven science fiction stories that are some of the best sellers today. And that development is something that is extremely powerful for authors like me to see and to read and to help us develop our writing as well so that we can continue to grow his legacy. He was also a master of world building. Prior to him, a lot of the famous science fiction novels either took place on Earth or on Mars, and the two were pretty similar. That's pretty much how it worked. I guess there were some on the moon as well, but there wasn't a lot of stretching for what could be and what could come. And because of his work in robotics, early robotics, he was able to see a future that no one had really thought of. There were some quote-unquote robots in some books. Well, he actually created the term robot, so they were called mechanical men or something along those lines, but were very, very simple and not well thought out until Asimov showed up. And ever since then, every robot that you've ever seen on TV or read in a book probably has foundations in Asimov's robots. He created the stereotype of what a robot should be in fiction. And it's something that I've actually had the pleasure of actually doing an entire panel on at LTUE this last year. But these robots became characters. He took that to a whole nother level. Instead of just being a MacGuffin like they were in the early 40s and 50s, he took the robot and made them a character. He partially humanized them. He put them in moral dilemmas, which is using his 3 laws, where he tried to make them someone you would care about and give them flaws. Several of his robots are villains, several are heroes. And all of that is a whole nother level of world building and character development that really broke the mold for science fiction and changed it to the point where we can basically have a free-for-all. It's spectacular. We can go to hundreds or thousands of different worlds through even galaxies now. And we're able to world build and imagine what a distant world would be like, or what a world run by robots would look like, because he decided to push that realm forward. And another big thing he pushed was scientific accuracy and research in science fiction. The term hard sci-fi was originally coined to tell the difference between the basic Johnny Rocket style science fiction that had existed, where they had things like death rays and giant ants that weren't well explained, and his work, because his work was based around actual physics and actual science, and everything that happens in those books was based on current scientific theory. Yes, a lot of it's now outdated, but because he used those scientific theories, he inspired a lot of people to look into them and see if they were possible. And he started a circular trend of authors inspired by science, inspiring scientists who inspire more authors. Ever since Asimov used hard science fiction in his books, he created that world where we can point at multiple stories and books throughout our recent history that inspired things beyond. One of my favorite examples to give is Star Trek and their communicators. At the time, no one really even thought about the need to get calls remotely. Actually, a lot of people thought it was a bad idea. But Star Trek presented the idea with the communicator. And within about 15 years, we were testing out cell phones. Cell phones were quickly developed. because Star Trek nerds thought, hey, that's cool, I want that. And they developed it. And once the cell phone started being developed, Ray Bradbury turned around and said, what if we take another next step further? And then on the Star Trek The Next Generation, instead of knobs, dials, and sliders, the ship was controlled by touchscreens. Touchscreens were unheard of at that time. There had been some speculations and some testing on some ideas for them, but no one really liked them, didn't think they were cool, and didn't actually have any practical application for them. But as soon as Star Trek Next Generation started doing it, all of a sudden, everybody wanted touchscreens because you can do the zooming thing and you can move stuff around. And then this has continued on and on and on, even just in Star Trek Generations. But all of this happened because Asimov was inspired by science, and then he inspired scientists to progress. And that includes himself. His writing inspired a lot of his works in robotics and astrophysics, which then in turn inspired more writing. And it is something that I am very proud to be involved in. And it's something, obviously, none of my stuff has inspired anyone yet. At least not that I'm aware of. If it has, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to see it. But I hope that someday it will. And that desire is something that's ingrained in science fiction now. Most science fiction authors are far more excited about the potential of some random thing they mention in a story inspiring something that will change the world than they are in just simple world building. It inspires them to push world building to a whole nother level that is beyond anything that our predecessors ever did. He also had some very talented and skilled writing habits, and really prolific that way. He was one of the first authors to openly talk about writing habits and ways to remain productive while staying busy. I am not great at that. I am working on it. But Asimov's system is fantastic for it. I'm not going to do a full deep dive on it today, but please look into it if you're a writer. He gives several great examples of ways to stay focused and to... One of the big things he mentions is carrying around a notepad. Luckily, we've got phones that do the same thing. So in your notes app, keeping a running total of story ideas, changes, little things that inspired it, notes for stories that you want to write afterwards, and then using every break you have, like lunch breaks or time at home on the weekends, to write and create. And by doing that, we are able to create a lot of cool habits that he really kind of pioneered. Before him, being a writer was a full-time job. You didn't do more than that. You were a writer, and you were only a writer. But for Asimov, that wasn't okay. He wanted to be a professional and a writer. And it really paid off. So, one of the big things that was kind of interesting to see in Asimov's life was a little bit later in life, he decided that he didn't just want to write science fiction. He became one of the first people to really cross boundaries between genres. And he paved the way for a lot of people to do that as well. We do see a lot with several of the Golden Age of science fiction writers. They did a lot of writing in westerns and some in fantasy. But Asimov crossed genres in a way that was unusual. He wrote mysteries as well as science fiction. And as far as I'm aware, he's one of the few that ever did that. There are two genres that are very dissimilar. There's not a lot of commonality between the two, but he became prolific in both. And it's been really cool to see that this author who broke pretty much every rule of being an author in the early 1900s really became prolific in all of his writing and left such a huge legacy because he was willing to do so. And he didn't push himself to be more like the rest of everyone else. He said, I'm going to do what I want to do because I want to do it, and went ahead and did it, and strove to challenge thought and challenge opinions of everyone who read anything he ever wrote, whether it was an academic paper or one of his novels. And that legacy really has continued to stick with us and has directly influenced multiple genres for multiple generations, and will continue to do so long, long, long after I'm dead. And there you have it. There's a quick overview of Isaac Asimov, who he was, and why he's so important to a lot of readers and writers in this modern era. And if you liked this video and want to have some more deep dives like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And in the comments below, if you have a favorite Asimov story, please let me know. And if there's any other ideas or famous authors from the past that you want me to cover like this, please comment below, like I said, and we'll get into them. I always love hearing from you guys and hearing your suggestions. And don't forget to ring the little bell down in the corner. That will notify you every time we have a new video coming out, so you don't miss a thing. And you can dive into this world of books with me and continue to grow your library too. Bye.